home. But it doesn't mean they disappeared. Justin Strekal, who was a college senior in 2011, left college and Cleveland to join the movement in New York. And Justin, you're joining us now. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
4 years removed from the Occupy movement. What have you noticed as people like you who were involved in the movement have kind of splintered off and tried to keep it going?
Well, there's a lot of things still going on to this day. You know, every week we see a victory for Occupy in the headlines. It's just no longer attributed to Occupy Wall Street. Ranging from, you know, people who I slept next to in the park now working on the Fight for 15 movement and the traction that they're getting there, with Governor Cuomo just endorsing having a statewide $15 minimum wage in New York, to people who, again, I slept next to in the park, and they, you know, did strike debt and rolling jubilee and really brought college debt to the forefront. And now we're seeing every Democratic presidential candidate now talking about how to get free college in public universities and community colleges. So, I mean, it's all things that we were discussing then that weren't being discussed pre-Occupy, when the whole conversation is, what are we going to cut from our government? What services are we no longer going to provide because we have a shrinking, you know, government spending system? So, no, we're seeing victories all the time.
Now, you dropped out of college to go to New York. You believed in this movement. When you got there, though, what frustrated you about what was going on in the parks?
I mean, people are people, right? When we talk about it, there were rumors that the New York City Police Department changed the bus route from Rikers Island with people recently released to drop them off at our park. There were rumors that the police were, you know, instead of arresting people for public indecency, intoxication, drug use, et cetera, they were dropping them off in the park. And, you know, also just New York City has a sizable population of people with mental health issues, with chronic homelessness, you know, who are unemployed. And we were providing services through the ethos of Occupy Wall Street, feeding people, providing people shelter and comfort items and things like that. And we were trying to do all of these things while dealing with state repression from the New York City Police Department.
Now, you had mentioned all of these things that had come from Occupy ideas, basically, that we weren't talking about before. But when you were in New York, were you frustrated that they didn't have a clear message, they didn't have a clear goal that they were trying to get to? I think that was the biggest criticism of the movement.
Well, I mean, that was a big criticism of the movement because, you know, when it comes down to the media assessing an organization, they're used to just having one, you know, communications director, press secretary that they're interacting with, and that one person or that small team of communications professionals, you know, harp on their messaging, you know, talking points. When it came to Occupy, there was a lot of clear messages coming out. It's just not everybody was saying the exact same message at the exact same day. So when we were talking about, you know, during the occupation and CNN and MSNBC and you guys were down there and doing interviews with people, you were hearing you were hearing what the message of the movement was, be it against Wall Street deregulation and the greed there, be it against the private prison industry, you know, be it for the need to expand Social Security or raise the minimum wage or provide, you know, a new jobs program at the federal level. We were talking about these things. We just weren't necessarily all on message at the same time.
So occupiers, they're still out there. They're now rallying behind Bernie Sanders. We see candidates on both sides of the aisle that are bringing up ideas that Occupy had brought forth, the income gap. Is this an Occupy victory now that 4 years later they're talking about those issues?
You know, I think when it comes to Bernie Sanders, a lot of people who I know through the movement are now supporting the senator. But I think another, you know, a really big victory that isn't being discussed enough is the fact that you look at the success of Donald Trump. And he's talking about hedge fund managers. He's talking about the carried interest tax loophole, which, you know, right now gives a few hedge fund managers $12 billion a year in tax relief. When you know, a small group of hedge fund managers make more than every American public kindergarten teacher combined, and they're paying a lower tax rate overall. And, you know, people love it when Donald Trump talks about the hedge fund managers and the rich and, You know, I
Okay.
think that's a victory.
Let me ask you this real quick. Part of Occupy's point was the 1% is paying politicians or in the politicians' pocket. Donald Trump clearly against that. He clearly talks about that. Do you see occupiers getting behind Donald Trump then?
You know, I like the fact that Donald Trump is talking about the issue. I highly doubt we're going to see, you know, an Occupy offshoot or affinity group come up and support Donald Trump. But I think it echoes the fact that the political paradigms that we think about left and right are not really true. You know, yeah,
I'm going to have to wrap you up there. We really appreciate it, though. Justin Strekal, Occupy Wall Street activist. Thank you for coming on. Thank you for your time.
Appreciate it. Thank you.